Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Frank's Amazing Podcast. I am your host, Frank Agino. It is a 2020 Mets season preview. Going to go over what happened in the 2019 season as we go forward to the new year on this New Year's Eve. It was a bit of a disappointing but improvement year, I would say, because if you remember in 2018, seems like a while ago now, but the Mets had 77 wins, and it took them a while to get there. They had to have a really good September, which we saw again this season, but we also did see improvements this season, which led to them finishing at 86 wins, 3 games out of the wild card, and that came from a really good second half run. And during that second half, that's all we were talking about was that wild card, trying to make it there, trying to chase the Cubs, chase the Nationals, Milwaukee Brewers, whatever team it was, because as the season progresses, everybody's jumping one another. Then the Diamondbacks get out in front. You're like, oh my gosh, now we got to beat them. So it definitely was a crazy race at the end. And it has made the second wild card very interesting for a team like the Mets, because there are instances where if you're in the American League, let's say, and you'll have 200-win teams in the division like you did with the Red Sox and Yankees 2 years ago, it's very hard for you to overtake that wild card spot when the team in the wild card also has 100 wins. But that second wild card has definitely added a different dynamic, gives you that one game playoff game, kind of like we see in football, and it really has changed the sport, and in my opinion, I believe for a good way. So it definitely puts yourself in a position where more teams want to compete because there's an extra playoff spot to some extent. It all comes about winning that game, but still, just the fact that you get an extra game and you win that one, you're in the playoffs. It just makes a lot more teams want to compete instead of trying to, rebuild and offload some contracts and things like that. But if you look at a breakdown during the season, the Mets went 2-1 in March because the season did start really early. They had that opening series against the Washington Nationals in Washington. Robbie Cano with the home run off Max Scherzer. And he's someone who I'm going to talk about a lot in this podcast because I talked about him a lot in last year's offseason podcast. And he's somebody that I really thought was going to make a big difference for this team in a good way, and that wasn't necessarily the case, and it is very puzzling how that did happen, but we'll get to that later. So they were 2-1 in March, that's great. 13-13 in April, not too good. I mean, the thing about the Mets is they're usually always really good in April, other than September, that's always their best month, so that was a little surprising. I mean, they had some really bad games, and the thing is that, one of the really troubling things about the Mets is how many games that they should have won, because there were a good amount of games, which I'm going to get into later when I talk about the specifics, but there were a lot of games where the Mets had not only just a big lead late, but good leads late. I mean, in the 9th inning, you're thinking, okay, this is game over. They got this one in the bag. All of a sudden, Edwin Diaz or Jeurys Familia or whoever gives up a home run, and the Mets will end up losing that game. And there were definitely some really frustrating games in May that stood out as well. 10-18 in June, not good, but not as bad as last year. I mean, in June, they had single-digit wins, and they lost a ton of games. I believe it was 20-something games that they lost in June, so at least that didn't happen again. But still, 10-18, you put yourself in a big-time hole, and that was the most impressive thing about this Mets team, was that there was a point in time in the season where it was, again, June, July, what have you, and the Mets had the second worst record in the National League, and they ended up jumping a bunch of teams, and they finished with the 6th best record in the league, and they had to jump 8 teams in order to do that. Now, should the Mets, with the roster that they have, been the second worst team in the National League? Absolutely not. I mean, they were really underperforming and underwhelming, and we were getting very frustrated again because, okay, here we have another really disappointing season, but they were able to make the most out of it. I mean, this young group, particularly the position players, they really fought very hard, and that's what allowed them to make their big second half run and be a team that was right down to the wire, and they competed very, very hard. But to go on with the second half, 14-8 in July, that's more like it. If you want to be a winning team, you're going to have winning months. It's very basic. Then 17-11 in August and 17-10 in September. So again, they finished the season very closely. There were also inexcusable losses and definitely mistakes that they made late in the season, whether it was the manager or certain players. All those were things that happened in the second half and the first half. And those are going to be some of the things that they absolutely have to clean up if they want to go to that next level. Because as of right now, the only big move that they've made, the only true upgrade they've made, is signing Dellin Betances, which I did a podcast on that as well. And Betances, it's going to be a risk, and I believe that it's going to be worth it. But it's not a guarantee that Betances is going to come in here and be the lockdown all-star reliever that he was with the Yankees a couple of years ago. So that is something that you can't necessarily count on. And I think the Mets, I say it a lot, but I think it's really important to understand how lucky the Mets have been, particularly with health. I know it sounds kind of crazy because when we think of the Mets, we think of all the injuries that they always have and how they always use that as an excuse. But I think in particular these last 2 seasons, they have been very lucky with health, particularly the starting rotation. There are a lot of teams that, they'll lose a starter for the season or a month or a couple weeks. And the Mets, they did not have much of that. And they were very fortunate that they had a lot of the same times where it was the 5 guys in the rotation that made almost all of the starts. And that is very tough to do. And I just don't know how long you can count on that, which is why I liked the Michael Wacha signing. But what I don't like is every time they ask Michael Wacha, about what he believes his role is going to be at this team, the way he keeps saying that, I'm a starting pitcher, and that's the way his contract incentives were based, and that's what he agreed to, that kind of worries me a little bit because that makes me think like Michael Wacha has to be a starting pitcher, or else you're going to become a team that you kind of get a reputation of being a team that may lie to the players, and you'll be a less desirable organization to come to play for, which I don't know exactly how desirable the Mets are, but recently they have become kind of desirable because you think of Rick Porcello saying he turned down better offers to come to the Mets. Dellin Betances turned down better offers to come to the Mets. At the end of the season, Joe Panik and Brad Brock, they both went to the Mets right away, and it was like a no-brainer for them because they really wanted to play for the team. So, I guess there is some interest in them, and I can understand, they were a fun team to watch in that second half. They were exciting. And again, it's just like that young excitement that, a young fan like me, it gets you excited as well because you can kind of relate to these young players. And again, they just were a really exciting team in the second half, had a 46-26 record, and that's what allowed them to make that big jump. Whereas in the first half, they were 40-50. So when you're under 500 for a whole half of the season, you put yourself in a really, really tough spot. And, they made a huge run, but, it still wasn't enough because of the problems that they had in the first half. And I was saying the same exact thing last year because last year they had a great September. Everybody was hitting. Conforto was hitting, Nimmo, Rosario. And it was just like, okay, well, if they could just do that again, the big if, like always, that they could do that in the beginning of the season and just carry over what happened in September, they'll be in really good shape. But that didn't happen. We still saw Jeff McNeil play really well, and we saw an improvement from Rosario. But again, it was like the second half of the season. Nimmo had a lot of injuries, and we're going to go player by player later on. But still, it's just unfortunately, I find myself saying a lot of the same stuff that I said last year, which really doesn't put my expectations through the roof. I'm not going to sit here and tell you at the end, I think the Mets are going to win 95 games, and they're going to win the division and go all the way and come get us. I don't feel that way. I still believe that there is more work to be done if they want to find themselves to be a winning team. But some of the real lows, the games in particular that stood out as games that, really can't happen and ones that ended up making a really big difference at the end of the season. One of the big ones that stands out was May 3rd to May 5th when they got swept by the Brewers and they couldn't touch Josh Hader. That was something that, to me, that was very frustrating because it ended up being that the Brewers had the second wild card spot. And one of the things that the Mets have got to take advantage of next season is the head-to-head matchups. I just felt there were some teams like the Brewers that the Mets really did not capitalize on opportunities when they played them because just like we were talking about gaining ground. It's just like, okay, well, the Mets will win a bunch of games, but the Cubs were winning a lot, or the Nationals were winning a lot, or the Brewers were winning a lot. So they weren't gaining any ground on them. And the only true way to gain ground on them is to beat them when you play them. And for the season, the Mets were 1-5 against the Brewers. That's a 4-game difference. The Mets were 3 games out of the wild card spot behind the Milwaukee Brewers. So you take a couple from them, and Edwin Diaz doesn't blow a bunch of games, boom, you have a wild card spot. It's not that easy, but it does help you. So another team that the Mets were not good against, 2-5 against the Chicago Cubs. And for a while, everyone was like, oh my gosh, we're rooting for the Cubs to lose. Cubs have to lose. It's the team the Mets were behind. The Mets ended up finishing better than the Chicago Cubs. But still, those games that they blew at the end of June, led by Seth Lugo, I'll get to that later. But still, it's just like those kind of things can't happen. You have to take advantage of the head-to-head matchups. Another team the Mets struggled against a lot, the Atlanta Braves going 8-11. That's a problem because of how often you play the Atlanta Braves and the rest of your division. Personally, I believe that there are too many division games in baseball. There are too many games during the course of baseball season anyway. I mean, 162 games is a lot when you consider the rest of the sports. There's nowhere close. I mean, basketball is half, and even they believe that should be shortened. You know what I mean? So baseball, it is too long. I'm not too worried about that. I'm more worried about the fact that it's like every game is the same game because the Mets are playing the Braves, the Marlins, the Phillies, or the Nationals. That's most of their games. And I just feel that's like we only see a little bit of the Cardinals or the Brewers or the Cubs. And it's just like if we cut down some of those Brave games and we played the Cubs or the Brewers more or the Pirates, Reds, I don't care who it is in the National League, the Padres, the Diamondbacks, whoever you want to give me, it's just like, okay, well, at least not every game is against the Atlanta Braves. And it would also add a little bit of a different element to that wild card race because then it would give the Mets more of those head-to-head matchups against the teams that they trailed, like the Milwaukee Brewers, or for a while they were trailing the Chicago Cubs. But another team that the Mets struggled against was also in their division, the Philadelphia Phillies, going 7-12. That's not good because, again, of how many games there are against them. Another thing that absolutely cannot happen. One of the teams that the Mets did do well against, and it was the main thing, like, okay, well, a lot of frustrating things happened during the course of the season. What thing really frustrated you the most? And I would have to say it was their record against the world champion Washington Nationals, going 12-7 against them, and they blew a lot of games late. So for me, it's just like, okay, well, they're going up against the team that's supposed to be the best in baseball, and the Mets did really good against them. They matched up well against them. And the thing is that, like, the Washington Nationals, they had the number one wild card spot, and they were a team that were able to win the World Series just because they won that wild card game. And it was miraculous with the way Trent Grisham, fumbled the ball in right field, and Trey Turner and Adam Eaton and Juan Soto, Anthony Rendon, all these guys, being thorns in the side of Mets and really the rest of the league. Those are really good players, and good thing Rendon is with the Angels now, so the Mets don't have to see his face, 20 times a year. That's definitely going to help them next season. But still, it's just like there is success that can be had, even if you are a wild card team. And it's just like you win that one game, and then anything can happen. And the reason why the Nationals were able to be so successful in every round of the playoffs was their starting pitching with Scherzer, with Strasburg, with Patrick Corbin. Even Anibal Sanchez stepped up, especially in the championship series against the St. Louis Cardinals, pitched an absolute gem. So for the Mets, they could have had the same blueprint because of DeGrom and Syndergaard and Stroman and Matz and Wheeler. Like, the Mets had the starting rotation to where they could be competitive in any playoff series, just like the way they were in 2015. I mean, that is still what is going to come down to ultimately, and that is why losing Zach Wheeler, it concerns me. And it's just like you really have to hope that Rick Porcello and Michael Wacha fit in nicely. You need Noah Syndergaard to have a bounce back. You want to see the same showman that was in the last couple starts. You want to see less frequent Steven Matz blow-ups. I mean, he's very inconsistent because Matz could look great. I remember the game he pitched against the Pirates. He'll go like 7 innings, 8 innings. Won't give up any runs. Looks great. Low pitch count. Not giving up hits. Not walking batters. They'll not have a game against the Braves or the Phillies where he gives up 8 runs in only a couple innings and he's, having a tantrum on the mound. It's like that stuff like that cannot happen. But that's just kind of the thing with Matz. And all in all, he'll be solid. But every now and then, he'll have those blow-up games. And unfortunately, when you play the division so much, most of the time it's going to happen against the division because that's where most of your games are. So stuff like that can happen. But some other ones, the 5-game losing streak from May 17th to May 21st, which was capped off getting swept by the Marlins, where it was like in the last 2 games of that series, the Mets offense completely fell asleep. They're only getting a hit, a couple walks. And the thing is, their lineup in May wasn't as good as the lineup later on, because once J.D. Davis got full-time playing time and, Brandon Nimmo came back and you had Joe Panik, who was a big X factor. Robbie Cano improved as the season went on. Ramos improved later on compared to it was in May. He got super hot in August and, J.D. was playing a lot and you had Alonso doing well. So the lineup and Conforto, the lineup was doing much better that time around, whereas in this May stretch, you had Daniel Freer playing and Juan Lagares playing and Todd Frazier playing. So those guys, obviously not as good at hitters as the ones we saw later on in the season. So you're hoping that, this is one of my main takeaways. And it's something, again, it's a hope. I don't know if it's going to happen. I just hope that it happens. But with the Mets having a new manager in Carlos Beltran, I just felt that one of the big lows, just to fast forward, in September when they lost those games against the Braves and the Cubs, where they were right there in the wild card race and they just lost game after game because the offense, it was pressing. And I just hope that somebody with a hitter's background like Carlos Beltran, who has so much experience will say to these young players, this is what you have to do in these type of scenarios so that you don't press, because it's just like, it's in these players. They have the talent. I just know it from watching them. I know what they're capable of. They're better hitters than this. And I just feel that if Beltran could get that out of them and make them not press, they'll be a much more successful team in these really tight games. I mean, these young players, the Alonso, the J.D. Davis, the Jeff McNeil, Brandon Nimmo, Amed Rosario, these guys are not used to big-time games that count for a lot because they are so young. So how could they have the experience of games like this? And I just hope that, Beltran could get them to overcome that and have the mental toughness to be the players that they normally are, because it's just like once the games didn't matter, all of a sudden the team is great again. So to me, it's just like you have to be better in those games that really count, because when the playoffs come, it's going to be like those games against the Braves and Cubs, and you can't find yourself pressing and striking out like crazy and then not being the team that you're supposed to be. So I think that is, hopefully, Beltran can help them with that. But, I mean, some of the other big losses, May 29th, talked about that a lot in the podcast. But Gsellman, Familia, and Diaz blowing that game against the Dodgers where the Mets had a big lead. Offense looked really good. Game looked like it was in the bag. I was sitting back. I was like, oh, Mets are going to win this, no problem. Then all of a sudden, when I saw them give up all those runs, I was like, what the heck just happened? How did the Mets lose this game? But you know what? And that it happened shortly after June 1st against the Arizona Diamondbacks. Same thing. I mean, we saw the bullpen blow it again, and it was Familia, it was Gsellman. So it's like it's multiple relievers that are blowing the game. It's like, okay, let me go to Gsellman. Oh, he gave up a run. Let me go to Familia. He gave a run. Let me go to Diaz. Oh, he blew the game. So it's just like no matter who the Mets turn to, they were making mistakes, and they're giving up these home runs, and they're blowing games and having games that look like they're wins all of a sudden become losses. And every time they blew these big leads, DeGrom was the guy starting. I mean, I have it right here. The June 1st game against the Diamondbacks, they blew that one. The one June 13th against the Cardinals, DeGrom pitches great. Diaz blew that game. What about in September, that game where they gave up a bunch of runs? Mets were up 10-4 against the Washington Nationals. And the Mets, they gave up run after run, and it was just like, oh my gosh, Diaz gave it up late. Mickey Callaway went to Luis Avilan instead of, Justin Wilson, and they didn't go to Seth Lugo, and it was like such a mess, and the bullpen was completely mismanaged. And you know what? It's just like, that is my main concern with Carlos Beltran. How would he know how to manage a bullpen? I mean, he's never done that before. He doesn't have a pitching background, and Mickey Callaway did, so it doesn't really matter that much, honestly, with the way that went. But still, I just hope that, Beltran's going to have the right people in his ears. Again, he doesn't have necessarily the greatest coaching staff of guys that have a lot of experience and have been successful managers or what have you and know about managing bullpens. So I really don't know how that's going to go. I hope Beltran can manage the bullpen correctly, but I really don't know. I mean, because how would I know if I have nothing to go off of? I've never seen Beltran manage a bullpen before. So I think that is going to be a really interesting thing to follow during the course of the season, where in a game like that, where you have a big lead, but all of a sudden, one of these pitchers, whether it is a Luis Avilan or it is a Paul Sewald, someone like that, where they're blowing the game, is he going to go to the right relievers later on and have the Mets be successful? I think that is something that is going to be really important to follow, because that ended up costing the Mets the most, was the times where it was games like that where these are wins, and you really should count them as wins, but you couldn't because there were multiple relievers that ended up blowing the game. So, I mean, those and all these stretches, when you talk about all these really, really bad games, that was the thing that was in common with all of them, was that they were really big bullpen losses. So, really didn't like to see that. But some of the highs, I mean, they had the back-to-back wins April 11th and 12th against the Braves, all-around team wins. And that's good because you want to see your guys doing well in all phases. And what I mean by that, I'm talking about offense, defense, starting pitching, relief pitching, all that together, you have a 6-2 win or a 6-3 win. And the guys held on to the lead, your offense got the lead, and you win the game. And that's what it comes down to, because you know what? It's like a lot of the times it does have to be pretty. Think about the Washington Nationals real quick. There was a point in May, and that was another high when the Mets swept them, and it looked like the Nationals were out of it. They were having a really bad year. Is Davey Martinez going to make it through the season? But all of a sudden, the Nationals got hot, and it wasn't pretty early on in the season, but they ended up winning the World Series, and you completely just forget about how bad they were. So it's just like, even if the wins aren't pretty, I think that I would just like to see what the Mets would do in a playoff scenario. Because, again, it's just like in 2015, my expectations were not high for them. Even when they didn't make the playoffs, they won the division, my expectations still were not high. But it just was one of the real examples, and you saw it the years after, just the value of starting pitching. being in every game. All you need is one big swing or a big play, whether it's like an Alonso home run or a McNeil double, just something like that, because the games are going to be so low scoring that just getting that one big hit and then having the relievers hold on to the lead is just so important, because I say this all the time, but it's just true. In 2015, the Mets had plenty of opportunities to win those World Series games. Familia gives up the home run to Alex Gordon. The mismanaging of Matt Harvey and Familia in the 5th game of the World Series. Games the bullpen absolutely blew. Tyler Clippard wasn't good in the playoffs. And it's just like, if the Mets improve their bullpen from 2015, maybe they can actually win the World Series. And it's just been a thing that year after year after year since we've been talking about bullpen, and we're still talking about it now. And if Dellin Betances isn't healthy, and if Diaz is bad again, if Familia is bad again, we're going to be talking about bullpen again in 2021. Like, how many years can we be talking about the same thing that needs to be addressed? Now, I know everybody wants to go crazy about Steve Cohen. Oh, Steve Cohen's money, it'll fix everything. We don't know that necessarily, because here's the thing, like, with Robinson Cano and Edwin Diaz, I was so excited about Edwin Diaz. I mean, you can go back and watch the offseason podcast. I don't know if I could put the clip in. I'll try my best. I don't know if I'll be able to, because it was a long time ago.
Do you realize the value that Edwin Diaz has, how highly regarded he is? Edwin Diaz led baseball in saves at 57, is 24 years old. The best is yet to come from Diaz. He's under team control until 2023 at a very low salary number. Do you know how hard it is to get a pitcher that good? And I like I said before, bullpen is such a high priority in all these major league teams. Do you know how badly people want Edwin Diaz?
It's just like, this should be something that it wasn't really a problem, because Diaz was locked down for the Seattle Mariners, but he was not locked down for the New York Mets. So it's just like little things like that, and guys are supposed to do their job, but they underperformed. It's stuff that you really cannot predict, because one of the things I saw earlier in the offseason was the Mets' interest in Josh Hader, which I tweeted right away. It screams Edwin Diaz 2.0 to me, and that is not something I would do, but still, it's just like, you never know what relievers are going to be good, what relievers aren't going to be good. I'll give you another example for the Washington Nationals. Again, because it's like, you should compare it to the team that won the World Series, because that was necessarily the best team of the season. So what did they do to win the World Series, and what can you learn from them so that you can win a World Series yourself? And getting a guy like Daniel Hudson, who was not an Edwin Diaz, he was not a Josh Hader, he wasn't a Dellin Betances, he was not an everyday guy, the reliever that people know and has been an all-star and all these different things, been in big games. He was a guy that just came from the Blue Jays, and he was the Nationals' best reliever. He saved them time after time and ended up being a big factor for them in winning the World Series. And guess who's a free agent? Daniel Hudson. And I know people like Betances, I do too, but still, I would like to see Daniel Hudson so I don't have to see Paul Sewald. I don't have to see Daniel Zamora or Tim Peterson or Drew Gagnon or Chris Flexen. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to see these pitchers anymore. I do not want to see minor league relievers. I want to see a Daniel Hudson. I want to see a Dellin Betances. I want to see guys that you can count on that actually get the job done and they protect these leads that you got so that, again, you win games. The Mets were 3 games out of the wild card. You need more wins and then see what happens in the playoffs. You really have to hope. As much as we hate the Washington Nationals, and trust me, I hate them as much as the next Met fan. I don't like them. But still, it's just like, you could learn from them, because that could have been you know what I mean? Like, the Mets, they could have followed that blueprint as well, and with their starting pitching, and they were right in that wild card race, they could have been in the World Series too. Would they have beat the Astros? Nobody knows. Probably not. But still, they could have got there, and you'd feel a lot better about a Mets team that went to the World Series instead of missing the playoffs. I know I would have. So, again, it's just something more that you could build on, and then the hitters and all the other players, they'll come back like, okay, well, we have unfinished business, and then we get it done the next season. I mean, you've seen teams do that in the past. You think of, I'll show you some other sports examples. Baltimore Ravens, they had that really, disappointing loss against the Patriots that one year where Billy kind of missed the kick and Lee Evans dropped the ball in the end zone. Then the very next season, Ravens come and win the Super Bowl. I'll give you another example. The San Antonio Spurs, where they blew that game, Ray Allen hits the big three, and it's like, oh my gosh, how could the Spurs come back from this Miami Heat, win the championship? Very next year, San Antonio Spurs won the championship. So it's just like you come back with a different sense of urgency, a different goal, the unfinished business, and maybe you could get it done. So, I mean, again, we're getting kind of off track here, but still, it's just like you want to just get those few wins, and then you could see what you can do to improve for the next season. Because the thing that is still at the Mets' advantage is that they have a lot of youth now, which is something that really has not been the case a lot for the Mets and in the position players, and more importantly, because I remember in 2016, right after the World Series, they had a lot of, mostly all veteran guys out there. Lucas Duda was older, and you brought in a Neil Walker, Asdrubal Cabrera. I mean, those are both older players. David Wright's old, and Jose Reyes is old, and Curtis Granderson is old. I mean, and I'm not like, trying to shame them or anything, but it's just like, you only had so many years left in them. I'll give you another example. The 2006 Mets, that's a team that really should have won the World Series. If Heilman doesn't give up that home run and they score some runs in Game 7 or whatever, but that was an older team as well, because Cliff Floyd's getting up there, Carlos Delgado, Jose Valentin, Sean Green. That was an older team, so you knew they were only going to be good for a certain amount of time. But this team is still young, so there is no reason why in a few years the Mets can't be good. And the other important thing is that Steve Cohen, all he needs to do, in my opinion, is re-sign these young guys. I mean, that would be the main thing to do. Because it's like, then you could build around them, because it's like, okay, well, you signed a big-time player, but you let Pete Alonso walk, and you let Jeff McNeil walk, and you let Michael Conforto walk, which, I mean, I wouldn't mind that too much, but, I'm just messing around a little bit. But still, it's just like, you want to maintain this young core. J.D. Davis, don't trade him, you know what I mean? Guys like that, Ahmed Rosario, keep this team together and have them, learn to play together, and they'll have more chemistry, and the way they work in the order, and they could set things up. They'll have more confidence in the infield and the outfield, not colliding into each other, turning nice double plays. But I just think that keeping this team together and watching them improve and, growing up with them, I think that would be something that all Met fans will look forward to, because this is a very likable team. I think that's something that you can't really just throw out the window. I've said this before, but I like the nicknames. I like the polar bear and the squirrel and the buffalo and all that stuff. I just think it adds a whole element to the Mets that makes them all the more exciting. Also gets them more money, what they do with bobbleheads and merchandise and what have you, but that's another topic. But to go position by position, how they did at the catcher position, it was Wilson Ramos that was the guy that got the lion's share. And you know what? For Ramos, the main thing with me was that when they signed him, obviously I was really excited about that, but the big concern that everybody had was his health. It was like, okay, well, we know Wilson Ramos is a really good offensive catcher. He's hurt the Mets a lot in the past, as a member of the Nationals and then with the Phillies. So we know he could hit in the NL East, and we know he could hit in Citi Field, but it's just like he's had injuries. Will he be healthy? And Wilson Ramos was really, really healthy. I mean, he didn't even have like a slight injury. So I think that was really encouraging to see that he did make it through the full season, no problem. But again, like I talked about with the starting pitchers, relying on Wilson Ramos to be completely healthy again, it's a tough predicament. And that is one of the things that when I get to it, I still think the Mets have to get a better backup catcher, because Ramos, he finished the season with 14 home runs and 73 runs batted in, and he was under 100 strikeouts. So I think that's really encouraging too, because a lot of the other guys, they were over 100 strikeouts, almost near 200 strikeouts. So at least Ramos wasn't striking out a lot, and he had a huge August where he batted 462, but he had a bad July at 203 and a bad September at 221, and he was in the 280s in May and June. So I guess law of averages, he has good months, has bad months. But it's just very interesting that when the Mets were at their best in August, they had that big winning streak. Wilson Ramos was such a big part of it. I mean, he batted almost 500 for an entire month, and this guy who's playing catcher. I know everybody did not like his throwing. It wasn't good. He wasn't great with holding on to the ball. There were too many pass balls, but you can't deny that he did improve as the season progressed. So I hope that he said that's something that he's working on even more, especially with the pitch framing. I know everybody goes crazy about that. That's why everyone wanted Grandal. I get it, but still, I like Wilson Ramos because I saw him perform in a Mets uniform. Because when you look at these other guys, when you look at an Edwin Diaz or a Robinson Cano, or even going back to a Jason Bay, we've seen so many guys that they were really good players, Frankie Rodriguez, and they come to the Mets, and then they're not the same guy, and they're not a good player. Todd Frazier even, and then Jet Lowry, who knows what that's going to be. I'll get into him later. But at least we know that Ramos could perform in a Mets uniform, and that's something that you can't predict. So you have to hold on to guys that can actually get it done for your team, because there's no guarantee that Grandal will come over here and be a good Met. What if he doesn't like New York? And I was so turned off from Grandal when I saw him when he was with the Dodgers, in those playoff series where they had to bench him because of pass balls and striking out too much and looking lost in the field and at the plate. I really could not sign him when that was the most fresh thing in his mind. I know he had a big home run against the Nationals in the wild card game, but that's where Grandal is. He's an all-or-nothing home run hitter, and the Mets have plenty of those. They have that in Alonso. They have that in Conforto. Even McNeil was kind of getting that way later on in the season when he was getting pull-happy. J.D. Davis was getting kind of pull-happy, and they hit a lot of home runs, and I know everybody loves the home run ball, but we've seen it where it's just like if you're a team that's all or nothing, like the Yankees, when all you do is hit home runs, sometimes there are going to be times when you're all or nothing, you're going to have guys that are hitting home runs at the same time, but then they're also all going to be doing nothing at the same time. And unfortunately for the Yankees, that happened a lot for them in the playoff series where everybody went to their nothing phase at the same time and they weren't able to get the big hits, get guys in with runners on base. And Ramos, that's one of the things that he excels at. He's great with runners on base, with runners in scoring position and 2 outs. He's much better at that than Grandal. Just look at the numbers. So I do like Wilson Ramos. I definitely would keep him as my starting catcher, but I would like a backup catcher just as an insurance, and also how bad the backup catcher position was for the Mets. Don't forget Travis d'Arnaud started the season with the Mets, and in his very few games, 23 plate appearances, had an 0.87 average with only 2 hits, drove in a couple runs. Then he went to the Dodgers. Then he finished the season with the Rays, and the Rays had a really good year, and d'Arnaud was a part of that. Wasn't great. Now he's with the Braves, so we'll be seeing Travis d'Arnaud a whole lot, but it's just like that was the guy who the Mets went to the season as their backup catcher. They tendered him, and not Wilmer Flores, which at the time I was going crazy. I'm still mad about it, and you know what? Wilmer Flores is a free agent again. I still sign Wilmer Flores because, again, it's like you cannot underestimate what it means when you could perform in a Mets uniform. I think that's just such an important thing. I'll tell you what, I would trade Jed Lowry for absolutely nothing and just sign Wilmer Flores. I make money. Maybe I could give that money to a Daniel Hudson or a Will Harris or a Tony Sepp. We're going to go later on all the relief. They're still, I mean, here's the thing, that is not being talked about. The big name guys, they're gone. We get it. Dallas Keuchel is gone, and Garrett Cole, and Anthony Rendon, and Hyun-Jin Ryu. All the big-time players that were free agents, they're off the market. Understand it. But still, not only are there a lot of players out there, there's still a good amount of solid players that are out there. So we will get to that later. But Tomas Nido was the guy who ended up getting the most spots as the backup catcher. And he had a 191 average for the season. And there were times like in September, he had a 100 average. In August, 111. In July, 150. In June, he had a 275 average. That was good. But April, 143. May, 226. I understand he's a defensive catcher, but he isn't that great defensively. It's not like all of a sudden teams don't steal all over the Mets, because they still do, even when Nido's catching or Rivera's catching. So I think that is an unfair criticism to Wilson Ramos, because it's like even when you have your defensive catchers out there, the Mets still get run all over. And I think another great example of the importance of Wilson Ramos and why I believe he gets blamed a little too much, I'm going to go back to a lot, but that game against the Colorado Rockies with Noah Syndergaard, after Syndergaard had made such a big thing about Wilson Ramos, I can't throw to him, blah, blah, blah. And then it was just like, okay, well, then we'll give you Rene Rivera. And Syndergaard still was just as bad, if not worse. And then Rivera comes up with the bases loaded, can't get anything done because he still had to stay in there for Syndergaard. Then Syndergaard gives him more runs in the bottom half of the inning. Wilson Ramos comes up later in the game as a pinch hitter and ended up being a huge factor why the Mets were able to make the comeback and win that game. So it's just like Wilson Ramos equals wins. I mean, I don't know if probably your WAR will tell you that, but still, you look at the games, you look at the numbers, Wilson Ramos equals wins. And like I said before, you need wins if you want to get to the wild card and get into the playoffs. So the Mets do need a better backup catcher, because if, God forbid, Wilson Ramos were to get hurt, you need somebody out there that still could get the job done, and you still feel that he's kind of reliable and that you can still win games. So I think catcher is definitely a position that, at least for the backup, there are some options out there. There actually are a good amount of options at the catcher position for the Mets to get, but I still think that's something that they definitely could do. At first base, it was Pete Alonso who got the lion's share, and we know he finished the season with the 53 home runs, most by a rookie. It was great, and I loved it. 120 runs driven in, 183 strikeouts. That's a lot, you know what I mean? 183 strikeouts is definitely far too many, and that is why Pete Alonso found himself as more of a guy who was a all-or-nothing home run hitter. And I just think that the Mets, they have to try to shy away from that. I don't want a team full of all-or-nothing home run hitters. If we go month by month and look at, where Pete Alonso did well and where he did not so well, I guess, again, kind of low of averages. But in April, he had a 292 average, and he had 9 home runs, 26 RBIs, 14 walks, but he had the 35 strikeouts. But I just think it was very fascinating that he could go a month where he bats almost 300, not 260, where he ended up for the season. So I think that, Pete Alonso had a great year with the 53 home runs. But for me, I believe that he's capable of more, because I just think that, especially later on in the season, it's just so by coincidence that in September, let's fast forward there real quick, was the month that he had the most home runs. He had 11 home runs, but he also had 38 strikeouts to go with it. So his power numbers were up, home runs were up, but strikeouts were also up. And we're going to see that when we look at the splits for the rest of the players. There were a lot of instances like that where the month where they had the most home runs, they also had the most strikeouts. But Alonso, I just don't understand why he would find himself overswinging so much when he just has so much natural, raw power. And the thing I like about Alonso a lot is that he also has a very nice swing. So the thing about Pete Alonso is that if he just puts the bat on the ball, there's a pretty good chance it's going to leave the yard, especially if the ball is in fact juiced. So I just think that he doesn't really need to overswing. There is no reason for that at all. And I just wish that he would try to shorten up the swing a little bit, have more of a regular hitter's approach. And you know what? If his home runs went down, but his doubles went up, and his average went up, and his strikeouts went down, I'd be perfectly fine with that. Because the other thing, this is something you can't predict. But how about Jeff McNeil having an above 300 average? There was a while where he was at the lead for the batting title. Then he got kind of pull happy. I really do believe that. Home runs went up, average went down. But a guy who batted, over 300, I think finished season at like 318, excuse me. But how many times did Pete Alonso hit a solo home run, despite the fact that Jeff McNeil was batting it from with an above 300 average? So it's just like there were so many times that even when Alonso did hit those home runs, it only accounted for one run. And there were times where he had runners on base, he struck out because he's overswinging, trying to hit the home run. So I just think that, you cut down on the strikeouts, and that's nothing. I hope Beltran can help him with that, because as a hitter, maybe he could give us some pointers. I know Beltran's supposed to be really good at noticing when pitchers are tipping. Maybe it's because he cheated with the Houston Astros. I don't necessarily know that's why Beltran's good at, finding why pitchers tip. But maybe you could teach that to an Alonso and a McNeil and these young guys and make them better hitters and not strike out as much. Try to teach them more of a hitter's approach of putting the ball in play and being better with runners on base, because we saw that in these playoffs and in the past playoffs and the playoffs before that, the importance of when runners are on, bringing them home. I think that's something really important. It's like being in the red zone in football. You don't want to settle for a field goal. You really want to punch it in, get that touchdown, and you don't want to miss the field goal. Like the way the Jets did the other day, Sam Ficken missing a 21-yard field goal. This is a baseball podcast. We'll get to the Jets later this week. But still, it's just like with Alonso, it was a really good year. He was a rookie, so Pete Alonso definitely exceeded expectations, and I think that's really good because of how guys like Robinson Cano, who we'll get to next when we get to second base, and also guys like Edwin Diaz and Jason Miller who underperformed. It was good to see Alonso, overperform, overachieve is the better word. And the other guy who had time at first base was Dom Smith, who finished the year with the 282 average. And he was great in April when he batted 370, not too many play appearances, 355 in May, 297 in June, that was great. Then in July, he got more at bats, and he was 167. And unfortunately, right at the same time, Dom Smith got injured, and he was out until the very last game of the season where he came back, hit that great walk-off home run. So I just feel that with law of averages, I hate that sounding Mickey Callaway so much, but there is something to when you look at these splits. And it's just like, okay, well, we know Dom Smith is not going to finish at 350 or at 370. So he's going to have to throw in a 167 month, to balance it out. But still, just the fact that he was able to finish in the 280s as a backup, I think that's really encouraging. But the thing is that since Pete Alonso was so successful, and since Dom Smith is a left-handed thrower, so he can't play second base, shortstop, third base, or catcher, he's also not that fast, so you can't put him in center field, and he's not that great in left field. He doesn't have much value on this team. So I like Dom Smith. He's a good cheerleader on the side. He has a great friendship with Pete Alonso, which is very nice to see because Pete Alonso took Dom Smith's job. And if you remember in spring training, these two guys, they were battling for the starting first baseman. And I just think the way they became such good friends, I thought that was really nice to see. Again, a very likable team. But you kind of do have to trade Dom Smith because, again, it's about winning games. And when you have a position that you have a kind of a surplus, you have to use it to get positions that you're lacking, and whether it's pitching depth, getting a true outfielder or a hitter that is better with runners on base or whatever, a backup catcher, whatever you may trade Dom Smith for that helps this team in an area that you're struggling. Because the other thing that the Mets could do which I think is very interesting, is they could hold on to Dom Smith. And I said this before, I'm pretty sure in the Betances podcast, but it's like if something ends up going awry, like pitching depth, or if you have injuries at second base, shortstop, or wherever the position is, and you need an area that you have to address, you could use somebody like a Dominic Smith to help get you a player that's a fill-in until that other guy comes back, or just hold on to the position for the rest of the season. So you never know what's going to happen during the course of the season. What's a need now, what might not be a need now, may be a need later on. So I think that's something the Mets have to be mindful of, and might have to be what you end up using Dom Smith for. If you have to use him to unload Jed Lowry's salary, that would be really unfortunate unless you use that salary to a Daniel Hudson or another reliever, or again, like a position that you need. Again, that wouldn't be ideal because, the Mets, oh my gosh, are trying to save money again. But still, I mean, you just have to do, what needs to be done. And I still believe that with Dom Smith, he's not going to serve too much value on this team if Pete Alonso is healthy, which I really hope that he is. That's another thing. I mean, Alonso was extremely healthy as well, especially for a big guy. He showed really good flexibility at first base, and is definitely a guy that if you're a Met fan, you have to be super excited for going forward. At second base, we had Robinson Cano, who was getting the lion's share, and he finished the year with a .256 average, 13 home runs, 39 RBIs, 69 strikeouts. Now, Cano, he had to be probably the most fascinating position player of the team because if you remember spring training, I mean, this guy was batting like 400 and he was hitting everything in sight. He's taking it to the opposite field. He's putting the ball in play. He's not striking out, making it look easy, which Cano always does for good or worse. He always seems to be like, nothing to it. That could mean nice plays at second base. It could also be, really boneheaded errors where, really inexcusable plays at second base where since he was so lackadaisical, he didn't pick up a routine ground ball and, make the play. But it's just like for Cano, I don't know what happened during the course of the regular season. One thing is that he got hit in the hand a lot, and he ended up always dealing with some kind of hand injury. He had to put like a little protector on the pinky or whatever. And I wonder if that ended up being something that, troubled him the whole season because your hand is an important part of your swing. I mean, it holds the bat. So I wonder if that messed up his timing and rhythm and what have you, because he'd always miss like a few days. Nothing major, but he'd be out a week or 3 or 4 games, and it just messed up his rhythm. And he's a guy who's always been extremely durable. Again, it's like typical Mets, because then all of a sudden Cano was finally heating up. He was doing really well. Of course, at the same time, the Mets were doing well. And against that game against the Pittsburgh Pirates, where the Mets scored a bunch of runs, Cano tears his hamstring. And it was just when he was getting hot. So you don't know how he would have done, throughout the rest of August. And up to that point in August, he had a .600 batting average. He's not going to finish at .600, but still he was fine starting to heat up. And in the games he played in September, .277 split for the batting average. That's nice and all. But still, it's just that Cano is known for being so durable, playing a bunch of games every single season. Then he comes to the Mets, not the same guy. So, that definitely was disappointing. But, I mean, you have to hope that he's better, that he comes back healthy. And if he doesn't, I mean, he's going to be so hard to get rid of. I really wish the Mets would just cut him if it ends up, because there was a point in time where, like, Joe Panik was doing well, and then it was like, okay, but now he's taking a playing time from a Jeff McNeil or a J.D. Davis. And these guys, I mean, they performed a lot better than Cano did, and it's not fair that because of his contract, he was taking up at-bats for them and could have been the deciding factor between wins and losses. And again, when you're only 3 games out of the wild card, every game is just so important, and if you had a few wins here or there, you'd be in much better position. At third base, I'm doing this with the way the Mets starting lineup should be, not so much who had most games played there, but in my opinion, Jeff McNeil should be the starting third baseman next season. I believe that he will with the way the team is currently constructed. But McNeil finished the year at a .318 average, 23 home runs, 75 RBIs, 75 strikeouts. So McNeil, I mean, his strikeouts, they got up there a little bit at certain points in the season, but all in all, he's a guy that's very hard to strike out. He has a great 2-strike approach. He always puts the ball in play, and I just wish they had more players like him because I believe he is such a big factor in winning games. I think he is a winning player. One of the important things about Jeff McNeil is that he got hurt very, very late in the season, like the past few games, and he broke his wrist because of a pitch that hit him. And you just hope that in spring training and the beginning of the regular season, he's going to have his rhythm and his timing and be the same player that he was early in the year, which was a really, really great player. So that is, the main thing that we have to hope for. Some of the most that really stood out, he batted .370 in April when he had 37 hits. He had 10 walks, 11 strikeouts. So, I mean, he did a lot of really good things to start off the season. .277 in May, .373 in June, .281 July, .297 in August, .278 in September. But in September, he had 7 home runs, 18 RBIs, 7 walks, 10 strikeouts. So, once again, the month that he had the most home runs, he had the lowest batting average. And I really felt that Jeff McNeil was overswinging in the end of the season. Because all of a sudden, he was starting to hit a lot of home runs. It was a lot of leadoff home runs. I remember that ended up being like a big trend. There was that week where it was like almost every game he was hitting a leadoff home run on a fastball, first pitch. And now he just found himself, since he was hitting so many home runs, he wanted to hit more. And I just really felt that he was overswinging. I like the 373 McNeil, 370 McNeil, where he's staying, in himself. He's not overswinging, putting the ball in play, getting a lot of hits, getting on base a lot, because he's not the best Mets home run hitter. That's Pete Alonso. That's Michael Conforto. So instead of Alonso getting 1 run or Michael Conforto getting 2 runs, how about they get 3 runs or 4 runs, because McNeil is getting on base with the amount of hits that he can get. So I really hope that he tries. It's going to be hard because now baseball is so home run heavy. Everybody wants to hit the freaking home run. So I don't know if Jeff McNeil is going to go back to the player he was early in the season. He's going to try to be pull happy again, but I really hope not. I do like the guy that puts the ball in play. The other guy who got a lot of time at third base was Todd Frazier, who, I was very critical of him because of all the times he struck out with runners on base and the mistakes he made on defense, the times he got thrown out of home plate because of his lack of speed. But you know what? He finished the year with 21 home runs, 67 RBIs, a 251 average, 106 strikeouts. The thing about Frazier is that he did have big hits. I mean, don't get me wrong. He had a huge home run against Philadelphia Phillies, which ended up not mattering because Edwin Diaz blew that game. He had a big home run against the White Sox. Mets did win that game. Then, of course, he had that big 3-run home run against the Washington Nationals that tied up that game, that miracle comeback that the Mets ended up winning and beating the Nationals. And it's like, he definitely had his clutch moments, but he also has moments, earlier in the game, like, the 3rd inning, 4th inning, 5th inning, where he struck out with the bases loaded, or he popped up, or he hit to a double play. Like, it seemed like he didn't get those big hits. He did get the big hits later on in the game. And similar to Cano, I felt that he was taking away at-bats from J.D. Davis and Jeff McNeil and these young guys and Joe Panik, who really deserved it. So the thing is that Frazier did end up finishing with 21 home runs, 67 RBIs, and really important home runs. And as of right now, Todd Frazier is a free agent. I have not seen anything with the Mets trying to bring him back. Not necessarily that I want them to bring him back, but it's like that's still 21 home runs and 67 runs that you have to account for somewhere. Somebody has to get those runs back if the Mets want to be close to where they were last season. And who's going to be that guy? Because the Mets have not added any position players that, are going to drive in runs. They added Jake Marisnick, but still, I still think that deal was like, okay, you have a good defensive center fielder. That's it. I mean, that's all Jake Marisnick is going to do. He's not going to come here and be a hitter, so he's not going to replace what Todd Frazier did there as far as offense. I mean, with JD getting more at-bats, with McNeil getting more at-bats, the Mets did not retain Joe Panik, which I really wish that they did because he did very well in his limited at-bats. He was another guy. I mean, he's tough to strike out. He'd put the ball in play. I believe he's a nice compliment to Jeff McNeil, and he could play multiple positions. So, I mean, it's just what's going to happen. And he played second base really, really well. That is his main position. Not necessarily more of a versatility guy. But I just liked what Panik had brought to the table. And he's another guy the Mets are going to have to find a fill-in for, because if Cano does get hurt again, I mean, he is getting older. I know Cano had been so durable. He finally got hurt with the Mets. But, I mean, when you get that old, you're going to be more susceptible to injuries. And it's like, who's going to fill in for these guys? And when I go to the other contributors, you kind of forget that there were so many guys that were in a Mets uniform that played games for them that they're not on this team anymore. And the Mets have not made any minor league deals really like the way they did last season. I thought that was something that ended up being a big factor for their success, was when they made the minor league deal for Daniel Echeverria, or they made it for Rajai Davis, and just the little players that they added here and there. Those guys ended up filling in for the minor injuries, whether it was like a week, players about a week or two. At least you could throw in Echeverria or Rajai Davis, and they filled in for the time being. And the Mets, they weren't lost because they had to put in a minor league player, which they had been doing so often in years past. And I think that's something that they really should try to do again, because it's like these little moves. I mean, they can help you add a game or two. And the Yankees, I mean, they showed that with the depth they had, that they had so many injuries. But because of Cameron Maybin filled in, because Gio Urshela filled in, those guys ended up being big-time contributors and starters for the team all in all because of how good they played in the limited roles. They didn't have to sign them to big deals. They didn't have to spend a lot of money. So I know you want to make these excuses, it costs money. It didn't even cost a lot of money. So, I mean, that's definitely something the Mets still can do. And like I said a little earlier, there still are a lot of players out there that they could add to the team. At shortstop, Ahmed Razar, he played pretty much every game there, besides, the little struggles that he had in the field, which he did improve. And, there was a time where he was making error after error after error. I believe it was in, May. But after that, Rosario really cleaned up his defense, and he also got better at the plate. Average went up. I mean, you look at months like July where he hit 350. August, he hit 333 with 41 hits. I mean, he ended up finish season with a 287 average, which is not something you expect out of Amed Rosario. 15 home runs was pretty nice. 72 RBIs is really nice for a guy that bats either at the top of the lineup or the bottom of the lineup. Nice to see him drive in all those runs. But he did finish with 124 strikeouts. Not a lot, but there were months like April he struck out 26 times, and May he struck out 31 times, and in August he struck out 22 times. But he'll have a month like July where he struck out 11 times, or September he struck out 14 times. So I hope that, again, like Beltran could help him out, be like, Amed, if the ball bounces or if the ball's in the other batter's box, don't swing at it. You know what I mean? I hope Beltran could teach Rosario something like that. Again, that's something you could only hope for. But, Rosario, he definitely showed improvements, which he kind of did at the end of last year, too. But, again, it's like you have to build off that. You can't just do that at the end of the year. You have to do it at the beginning of the year and the end of the year. That's what makes you a good player, if you're somebody who could do it all the time. So I really hope that's something that we could see from Amed Rosario. In left field, again, this is who I think should be out there. J.D. Davis finished the season with a 307 batting average, 22 home runs, 57 RBIs, 97 strikeouts. So he just got under 100, but, he didn't have enough plate appearances. If he was starting from day one, he would have over 100 strikeouts. So that definitely is problematic. And for JD, he was a real interesting player because of his inconsistent playing time. Early in the season, he batted 302, but it was very limited plate appearances. 11 walks to 12 strikeouts. That is a very good ratio. But the thing is that, with J.D. Davis, he got more playing time, and all of a sudden we saw more power for him. We saw him hit for a high average. You think of June, we batted 328. July, he batted 373 with, 19 hits. And then in August, he batted 295. September, he batted 357. J.D. Davis was awesome in the second half of the season. He ended up being a huge boost, by far the best offseason move, not really the only good offseason move the Mets made outside of Wilson Ramos, and he was a guy who really overachieved, overperformed. We're talking, again, like Diaz and Familia underperformed. J.D. Davis was much better than any of us could have ever hoped for. And I really hope that he gets an opportunity next season because, you know what? Center field, as of right now, Brandon Nimmo, he had a tough year, 221 average. But the thing is with the Mets is that, this is me. I get a funny feeling that Cespedes is going to be out there opening day. And how healthy will he be? How long will he be out there? I don't know exactly. But I do know that he will be out there. And if Cespedes is out there, Michael Conforto, no matter what, is going to have another outfield spot. And J.D. Davis cannot play center field, and there is no designated hitter, and Jeff McNeil has to be at third base, unless the Mets did this is something, a line I just thought of real quick. What if the Mets did J.D. Davis at third base, Yoenis Cespedes in left field, Jeff McNeil in right field, Michael Conforto in center field? That defense stinks. I know. You can tell me the defense is horrible. I get it. It's a good offense. You know what I mean? You'll score your runs, but you're not going to prevent too many runs with that lineup. So, once Cespedes does come back, I feel like either JD or Brandon Nimmo, one of them, they're going to the bench. And that's just the way it's going to be. And Brandon Nimmo, it might not be the worst in the world because he did not have a great year. We'll look at him right now. In the beginning of April, he struck out 36 times. And there was a streak where we talked about, Jeff McNeil hitting the leadoff home runs. Brandon Nimmo was having leadoff strikeouts, and he would just, every time a game started, Brandon Nimmo strikeout looking. It was far too often. And the thing about Nimmo, I talked about it last year, his strikeout numbers, they're high, but you know why? It's because his walks are high. You think of a month like September where he came back, he had 20 walks to 23 strikeouts. Brandon Nimmo takes so many pitches for good or bad that he finds himself in so many two strikeouts because he didn't swing at anything and they threw a strike. Sometimes not fair. They could have been balls. Umpires aren't the best. They don't make every call. But still, all he has is one swing to, make a hit. And he'll be in a full count, and it'll be a borderline pitch, and Nimmo will take it because he's such a walk machine. Sometimes they call it a strike, and it's a strikeout. So, for Nimmo, he strikes out a little too much. The neck injury really messed him up, forced him to miss a ton of time, and really could not be the same player that he was. Again, he was better when he came back. He had the 430 on base percentage. That's what he's an on base percentage guy since he is a walk machine. But I don't know. I'm still not sure if he's quite an everyday outfielder. And he's not a traditional center fielder. He's not a great defender in a center field position. Doesn't have the best range. Does not have a great arm. So, you don't want him necessarily as your everyday starting center fielder. And you don't want Conforto as your starting center field either because he doesn't have great range and doesn't get to every ball either as well. So it's just going to be like when Cespedes does come back, I know he's going to help the offense. But the defense is going to be really odd because everybody's going to be in the wrong spot, and it's just going to be, weird to see how it goes because Cespedes is going to try his best. Now that his contract is incentive-based and he wants to make every dollar he can because he lost out so much money with the way the Mets were able to restructure this deal, I just think that, Cespedes, again, he's going to be trying his best to, really improve. And the Mets, they're going to be a different lineup and a different defense because of it. So, I'm very fascinated to see how that ends up going and, who gets the playing time, who doesn't, and then how J.D. Davis can be able to do in a bench role because we saw that a bench role is not for him. He's a starting player. He needs the at-bats. He needs the rhythm. And when he's out there, he provides a lot of good stuff. And I always go back to that walk-off hit he had against the Cleveland Indians where at the end he screamed at the top of his lungs, "Let's go Mets." That was very exciting. He wants to be a member of the team. And the other thing I love about J.D. Davis is you see all the time another player will do something. It's not him. Alonso gets a big hit, or Conforto gets a big hit, or McNeil gets a big hit. You'll see J.D. Davis doing a cool little dance in the dugout. You know what I mean? So for J.D. Davis, he's a guy that really is a team player and someone that I would like to see play a lot, but I don't know if he's going to with the way it's going to be with Cespedes. Maybe this is a one-year thing. I don't think the Mets are going to re-sign Cespedes, even if he has another great year, because I hope that it will fall for his antics again, because once he gets the contract, he's not the same guy. So, again, outfield is going to be weird. In right field, it's probably going to be Michael Conforto, who finished the year with the 257 average, but he had the 33 home runs, which everybody loved, and the 92 runs driven in, but he also did have 149 strikeouts. So Conforto, similar to Alonso, he became an all-or-nothing home run hitter. And again, I'm not crazy about those. I know everybody loves Conforto because he had so many home runs, and he's a good guy. He's a very nice guy. Again, he's a likable team, another young, likable player that has some energy and what have you. But he had a lot of energy when he got the big walk-off hit against the Nationals. We talked about Frazier hitting that game-tying home run. But Conforto, it's like he has it in him to not be such a heavy strikeout guy. I mean, similar to Nimmo, he's also a guy that has an eye that he doesn't swing at too many pitches. So like April, he'll have 29 strikeouts, but he also had 22 walks. So he finds himself in a lot of deep counts, but he also, he doesn't put the ball in play too much. When he does, it usually is a home run. In May, 13 walks and 17 strikeouts, but a 242 average. In June, he had 229 average. So there are months where he'll have a really large, but then in July, he had a 298 average. So he is very inconsistent. He is very streaky. Then in September, he had a 220 average, with 16 walks and 31 strikeouts. So I just feel for Conforto, he still is too inconsistent. He still strike out too much. There's something that, again, you hold Beltran, he can only do so much. Beltran is not going to go into the batter's box and swing for Conforto or for Alonso or Nimmo or any of these guys. But I hope that he could teach them an approach that isn't so strikeout heavy and that is something that they can put the ball in play more. That's, again, it's something you can only hope for. We don't know that's going to be the case. One of these guys regress under Beltran. Well, if they're not as good hitters, you never really know, especially with a manager. It is so unpredictable what type of impact they're going to have on the team. You just have to hope that it's a positive one. But other contributors, Juan Lagares, he had 215 average. He 55 hits, 5 home runs, 27 RBIs, 22 walks, 75 strikeouts. Lagares, he was out there for defense. Jake Marisnick is going to fill in that role now. So Lagares, he's a free agent. They're not going to bring him back. But Adenis Faria, he ended up appearing in 60 games. He had a 204 average, 5 home runs, 18 RBIs. The Mets ended up getting rid of him before he got his contract bonus and he ended up hurting them. As a member of the Braves, he did well there, and he's off the free agent market as well. But still, he's a guy that had to fill in for the Mets when Ahmed Rosario was having his, struggles on defense. And when some other infielders had some injuries, Adenis Faria was a guy that filled in. So they need someone to fill that role. Will Jed Lowry be able to do it? I hope so. And because the thing about Lowry, he was so frustrating because he was hurt all year. He didn't play a single game of spring training. Jed Lowry comes back as a pinch hitter, and he went 0 for 7, and he struck out almost every time. He barely put the ball in play. You know what I mean? So Jed Lowry was extremely disappointed. They're paying $10 million a year for this guy, and next year has got to be better. It can't be worse unless he doesn't play a single game, which he pretty much did last season. Jed Lowry's going to have an impact on his team. He has to be the versatility guy if the Mets keep him, which they probably have to, because who would want him? Who would want to pay $10 million for this guy? And the Mets don't. The reason why the Mets want to get rid of him is because they don't want to pay him. So why would they trade a team and still pay him any portion of the salary? They're going to need him as a versatility guy because Adenis Echeverria is not here, because Joe Panik is not here, and they haven't signed any other utility position player. Jed Lowry, he's going to probably have to have an impact on this team and fill in if there are any injuries, which there will be. That's something that we we can't ignore. Like, there are going to be times where a guy is out for a couple weeks because they strained something or sprained something, or they have a concussion. I mean, that's just a part of the sport. 162 games, nobody's going to play all of them. You're going to have times where players are going to have to fill in. And you know what? We saw guys like Ruben Tejada, who didn't have a single hit as a Met, and Ranieri Verifield did, and Rajay Davis, and Aaron Altero had a 129 average, and Carlos Gomez, and Guillorme, who Guillorme still should be on this team because of how good he is defensively, and he got big hits later on. He looked like he improved. Keon Broxton, like, the Mets had so many different players that we really forget about. But you know what? Again, it's like you signed Marisnik, but you're going to need to sign more players because you're going to need guys that fill in. And if you want to be a winning team, you have to have depth. And I just think that the winning teams have shown you that with the guys that filled in. I mean, the Nationals showed it when they signed Asdrubal Cabrera, filled in really nicely. Gerardo Parra, just these little veterans. I mean, not all-stars, not starters, not great players, but guys that can fill in when they are called upon. So we did the hitters. Now let's look at the pitchers. And pitching was very interesting for the Mets because it was a thing that was a bit up and down. And it's, no surprise that as the Mets improved later on in the year, the pitching was a part of that. Like, when the players did well, the team did well. It's a very easy, parallel. But Jacob deGrom, so for deGrom, he wins the Cy Young the year before. It was going to be hard to replicate that, but he did by winning the Cy Young again. And he was locked down later on in the year. In the first half, he had some disappointing starts. And there was a point in time where we're like, is this the same deGrom? He was giving up a lot of runs. Very uncharacteristic of him, but he was able to figure it out and, go back to the Cy Young pitcher that he was the year before. And as a guy that, you really feel like you can count on every single year. As he finished the year with a 2.43 ERA, 11-8 record, wins and losses, it's like, you know what? I talked about the parallel also of all those games that the Mets lost, and deGrom was the one who was pitching, where they had a really big lead late, then the bullpen blew it, or the defense messed them up, or deGrom left a 1-0 game or a 0-0 game, and they still ended up losing. So he has so many no decisions and so many games that he really should have won that were out of his control that the team lost for him. So record really means nothing to me because Noah Syndergaard, he was 10-8 and had an ERA almost 2 full runs higher at 4.28. Noah Syndergaard was extremely inconsistent, very disappointing, underwhelming, all that stuff, because I just think that he's somebody that people always talk about as a guy that could be a really good pitcher and someone that has so much talent and he has the stuff and, he's going to win a Cy Young eventually. He's going to be an all-star. And you know what? Noah is yet to be that guy, game in, game out. And there's always an excuse. Either he's hurt or he says it's mechanics, or it's the weather, or he needs Dr. Phil, or it's the catcher. It's just like always something with Noah. I've said it so many times, but I really do not like all the excuses that we constantly hear from him because it's just like eventually there is no excuse. Like, you have got to get it done. You don't hear Jake make excuses. Wheeler, Matz, Stroman, these guys don't make excuses. It's always Syndergaard. So, you know what? I have to be honest with you. With the Mets signing Porcello and signing Michael Wacha, I wouldn't be too opposed to a Noah Syndergaard trade. I know now isn't the time because you don't get the best value for him. But still, it's just like, if he continues to do this stuff where he's constantly complaining and being a problem and just always is something with him, eventually it's like you got to cut your losses. I'm not going to say Odell Beckham level, but eventually it becomes kind of a distraction. And, I talked about this team being really likable and the young players being very exciting and friendly guys. But, I mean, with Noah, you don't get that same sense because, you know what? Alonso and McNeil and JD and Rosario and Conforto, these guys don't complain and make excuses like the way Noah does. So I really hope that's something that doesn't happen anymore. Wheeler, I mean, it's unfortunate. He had a really good year. I mean, he was much better after the trade deadline because since it was the expiring year of his contract, all they talked about was, are they going to trade Wheeler? Are they not going to trade Wheeler? Even the year before, they were supposed to trade him. And you know what? Seeing Wheeler walk away and getting $100-something million from the Phillies, which, the Mets were coming anywhere close to sniffing that price, why didn't they trade him? You know what I mean? Like, if some team gave you a great offer and was so desperate to get him, because here's my thing. Like, if the Phillies were willing to pay over $100 million for Zach Wheeler and other teams were willing to be in that ballpark, what would they be willing to offer you for a trade? If this is a player they feel is worth $100 million and, a long-term investment, what would they have been willing to trade so that they could get him and try to kind of recruit him? Like the way, Oklahoma City tried to do with Paul George and like teams have done in the past where you trade for a guy and you basically get a bit of a half a season or a full season long of a sales pitch to get them to stay long term. I mean, that's how a lot of, extensions happen, where a guy gets traded, not exactly the place they thought they would sign in the offseason, but ends up being the place that they do indeed stay. So I think that is something that the other teams could have tried to pursue with Zack Wheeler. And if you really could have got a good package for him, whether it's prospects, which the Mets could really, really use. I know I'm not really the prospect guy. I'm more of a, what do you do for me in the big leagues, not the minor leagues. I want to win now. I don't want to win later. I just want to win. You know what I mean? But for the Mets, they really do need to rebuild the farm system, because since they are in win-now mode, they have gutted the farm system. They have traded Kelenic and Justin Dunn and a lot of really good relievers. They traded, prospects, young players. They did that also in the Marcus Stroman deal. So, I mean, they've lost a lot of pieces. There's not really much left in the farm system. Jimenez is still there, and he hasn't been great. I'm not crazy about him from what I've seen. He is a smaller player. He's not going to give me power. He's not going to give me much offense. His defense, I mean, it could be good. And, don't get me wrong, defense is very important, especially at shortstop. But I don't think he's going to be better than Rosario, to be honest with you. Defense, pretty probably, but not so much offense. He's not going to be like a star player, all-star, major impact guy. So, I mean, if they were to trade Jimenez, they do. But, I mean, what more do they really have in that farm system? And I just think that Zack Wheeler, he could have helped get you at least a couple guys that you really could have used. And you know what? He was good in the second half. He had that big start, the Sunday Night Baseball against the Dodgers. And it stinks to let him go, because I liked watching Zack Wheeler. I don't know if the whole idea of Beltran being traded for him and then Beltran being the manager of Wheeler, that being awkward, if that's why they didn't retain him, it's definitely the money. I mean, no question about it. But it definitely would have been very fascinating to see that kind of pairing, considering they were traded for one another. But Steven Matz, he was another guy. He had an interesting year. He had a 4.21 ERA for the season, 11-10 record. But like I said before, with Matz, he had his injuries and what have you, only finished with 160 innings on the season. They still got 32 games out of him, which they also got out of Noah and DeGrom. So, Matz doesn't go as deep into games as Noah Syndergaard and Jacob DeGrom. But the thing that Steven Matz, did do was he did have good starts, like I said, against Pittsburgh. And there were other games where he'll go deep into games and not give up a lot of runs. It looks like a really quality pitcher that you can count on and be the guy that he's supposed to live up to. But you know what? He is inconsistent. He does have his blow games where he'll give up 8 runs, 9 runs. And you know what? That start against Philadelphia where he gave up so many runs in the first inning, couldn't even get it out, that really messed up his ERA. And, but for the most part, he is a solid pitcher. He's a good number 4. You know what I mean? A lot of teams would like to have him. And you know what? If Matz does have another good couple of years, think of Wheeler's ERA was 3.96 and Matz is 4.21. Not too far off. So if Matz is a little better, would another team give Matz $100 million? I mean, he's a left-handed starter. I mean, lefties, they're not nearly as common as right-handers. So I just think that, like, the Mets, if Cohen, we're really relying a lot on Cohen, because not only do we want him to retain Alonso and McNeil and Nimmo and Conforto and Rosario and all these guys, is he going to be able to retain the starting pitchers? Is he going to be able to give Steven Matz the $100 million and Noah Syndergaard $100 million and Marcus Stroman $100 million? Like, all these guys are worth it more than that. If Noah Syndergaard is half as good or 75-80% of as good as people think he's supposed to be, Noah Syndergaard can make $200 million. Look at what Garrett Cole just got. So, there is so much money that the Mets are going to have to pay for this team eventually. We're not worried about it now. But still, it's just like they have to consider trades. They really do. And that is why, I'm going to close the podcast. We're not ending it yet. There's still more to get to. But at the end, I'm going to say, I'm really curious to see what they're going to do with the starting rotation, because with Porcello and Wacha, I really don't want to see this Wacha thing really become a big thing where he complains. Again, this is a likable team. Everybody gets along. The chemistry is good. I just don't want to see it become something where it's just like, okay, well, because Wacha doesn't, like the way the situation is, he's going to make a big thing and mess up the clubhouse and whatever, the locker room. I really don't want to see that happen. If they trade Noah Syndergaard, I'm not going to cry over it. I'm not going to lose sleep over it. Hopefully they get something back. If they get bullpen plus center fielder, or he's part of a Nolan Arenado trade or Francisco Lindor trade, which they're not going to do, by the way, at least not under the current ownership. But still, I just feel like, the starting rotation, it's going to be interesting because these guys are being worth a lot. Stroman is on the last year of his deal. Someone's going to give Marcus Stroman $100 million. No question about it. If he just has a pretty good year, he'll get $100 million. So again, it's just like, are the Mets going to give Stroman $100 million? I don't think so. So if they give you a good offer for him, you take it, especially if Porcello's pitching well and Walker's pitching well, and you still have 5 starters that you could use. Goodbye, Marcus Stroman. Give me some farm system, because you know what? If Cohen retains the main guys, like I said, the stars and the position players, then eventually I'll have the prospects come up and be major league ready level players. The Mets could not only be good now, but be good later. It would be great to see them be able to do both, not be where it was like in 2006 and those couple of years where, you know, they made the playoffs, just missed the playoffs, and then they were horrible, and they were really far from making the playoffs. And then, you know, they make the World Series 2015, good for a couple of years, and I feel like they're going to be good for a few more years. But then I really don't know what's going to happen 4 years from now, 5 years from now. It's very hard to predict what's going to happen with me or anybody else, you know. But still, it's just like, with the way the farm system is and with how much money it's going to cost, it doesn't look likely that the Mets are going to be as good in 5 years as they are now, at least with the way they're currently constructed. But still, some of the other guys, you know, Stroman, he finished with a 3.77 ERA as a member of the Mets. Pretty good, you know. I mean, it's better than Wheeler, it's better than Matt, so that makes him a number 3. It technically makes him a number 2 because the ERA was better than Noah Syndergaard. But still, I mean, Stroman, he didn't look great his first few starts. I have to be honest with you. I mean, he was sweating a lot. He was walking batters, giving up far too many runs. Not the pitcher that they traded for necessarily. But as the season ended, he definitely looked better. And, you know, like these other young position players, you hope it's something that they could, you know, build off of and carry on going to the next year. And then this is where things get really interesting, the bullpen. And for the Mets and really all these other teams in baseball, addressing the bullpen is going to be different than years past. With this 3-batter minimum, I know the Mets only have Justin Wilson as their only left-hander in the bullpen. And you know what? That's kind of have to be the way it might have to be, because a lot of lefties, like a Daniel Zamora or Luis Avilan, most of these guys are considered lefty specialists, and no team is going to bat 3 lefties around. I mean, maybe the Mets would, you know, not necessarily that they have the lefties to do it, but it's just like teams probably aren't going to do that because of this 3-batter minimum rule anyway. So it's like Justin Wilson, he can face right-handers, which he had to, because when Familia was doing really bad and Edwin Diaz was doing really bad, Justin Wilson became the second best reliever for the Mets and ended up being a guy that he'd have to pitch an inning or more. So Justin Wilson, the 3-batter minimum rule, it's not going to affect him. But the first guy, that, you know, Luis Avilan, he was a lefty specialist, and he finished the year with a 5 ERA. So, I mean, here we go. It's going to be another year with the bullpen ran, because we look at Luis Avilan and Wilmer Font and Drew Gagnon had an 8 ERA. Walter Lockett had an 8 ERA. Tyler Baxter's ERA was almost 7. Paul Sewald was 4.50. Chris Mazin was 5.5. Brock was 3.6. You know, Brock had good moments, bad moments. But Daniel Zamora, I mean, he had a 5 ERA. Hector Santiago had a 6.75 ERA. Tim Peterson with a 4.9 ERA. Brooks Pounders a 6 ERA. Corey Oswald a 12 ERA. Steven Nogosek a 10 ERA. Jacob Rame a 4 ERA. Like all these minor league relievers, I say it all the time, but it ends up being the case, and the Mets still have not done anything about that. You signed Betances, great, but people are going to get hurt, and you're going to need more relievers than that. So if we have to see Tim Peterson, or we have to see Daniel Zamora, or we have to see Drew Gagnon, or we have to see Chris Flexen, or all these different, you know, minor league relievers all over the place, I don't want to see them. You know, get them out. I just want to see, again, I just want to see major league guys that I know that could get the job done and they could protect the lead. And the Mets could be a quality team, because it's just like, think of how many pitchers there were. Like, you know what? If the Mets bullpen is Edwin Diaz and Jeurys Familia and Dellin Betances and Seth Lugo and Justin Wilson and Brad Brock and Robert Gsellman and then I guess Michael Wacha, you have 8 relievers. Okay, you have a bullpen. Great. But do you see 8 guys on here that I just listed? No, it's like triple that. It's more like 24 guys. So it's just like you're going to need more pitchers. And unfortunately, it's going to be a lot of the same guys. It's going to be all these minor league guys. And again, I don't want to see them. So the Mets, they have to do something, because here's the thing. Like, there are a lot of relievers out there. And you know what? They're not Betances. They're not Blake Treinen. And you're not going to make the trade for Josh Hader, but you know what? Daniel Hudson's out there. Will Harris, Sam Dyson, Juan Asasio, Steve Cishek, Pedro Strop, Nate Jones, Hector Rendon, Pat Neshek, Johnny Ventures, just to name a few. Like, there still are more out there. So it's like there's no excuse why, and I don't think none of these guys are going to want $10 million, $8 million, $7 million. You'll be able to get them for pretty good deals. I don't know if they'll take minor league deals necessarily, but, you know, there are plenty of pitchers out there that are better than all these minor league relievers that you ended up using. And you know what? The bullpen was the main problem for the Mets last year. And, again, like Betances, I'm excited about it, but it's not enough. Like, they still need to do more about it. They can't rely on Edwin Diaz bouncing back, that Jeurys Familia is going to bounce back. It's not how it works. So I really wish that they would take, more strive, they would take more steps to address the bullpen. I mean, that is something that they really have got to do. But to look at the other free agents, some moves that the Mets could possibly make, at catcher, I really said that, they still need a backup catcher because, you know what, Tomas Nido is not enough, and Wilson Ramos, he was super healthy. You can't really rely on that happening again. But some of the guys that are out there, Robinson Chirinos, I heard the Mets had some early conversations with him in the beginning of the offseason. Nothing really doing there, and I know that Chirinos wants a starting catcher deal, which he's not going to get with the Mets. He's going to be a backup. I don't think he's going to be willing to take that. Another guy that's out there, Russell Martin, the former Yankee. He is 37 years old, but I think he would make a solid backup catcher, fill in some games here or there. I think he would definitely get the job done, and he's not going to ask for a ton of money. I don't know if he still wants a starting catcher role. I don't know exactly what his wishes and demands are, but I think that's something that's really worth considering. He's definitely better than Tomas Nido. You have other guys out there, Josh Phegley, Kevin Plawecki. I don't think the Mets bring back him. Francisco Cervelli, he had some nice moments as a member of the Braves. He hurt the Mets, had the head-to-head matchups against the Braves. Francisco Cervelli did well against them, so wouldn't mind seeing him. I think he'd make a really nice backup catcher. Rene Rivera's out there. I don't think the Mets are bringing him back. Nick Hundley, Matt Wieters, Jonathan Lucroy. I think he's going to start a catcher deal as well. But there are options. Again, I mean, that's just to name some of them. But there definitely are plenty of options out there for a backup catcher. So no excuse why it can't be done, why they can't upgrade from Tomas Nido. At first base, I mean, Mitch Moreland, he's a really good defensive first baseman. He'd be a nice complement to Alonso. A lefty, again, a guy that's been a Gold Glover. Offense not nearly as good as it used to be. Neil Walker, if people want to see him brought back as a utility guy, I mean, he could get it done. Not nearly the same player that he once was, even when he was with the Mets. I didn't think he was great, but he's not even close to that player anymore. You have Logan Forsythe, who could play positions. Ryan Zimmerman's out there, but he's not coming to the Mets. I mean, he was in the fountain of youth in the postseason. He was much better than I thought he was going to be, especially watching him a good portion when the Mets played against the Nationals. Zimmerman was not that guy he used to be, but in the playoffs, he had some big hits for the Nationals and ended up being the player that they needed him to be to really, win the World Series. He definitely helped them out with that. Greg Bird is a free agent. I think he'd be interesting. I don't know what kind of deal he'd be willing to look for, but just to try to stick it to the Yankees, and you know what? Not the Yankees' fault. I mean, the Yankees would have played Greg Bird if he wasn't always hurt all the time, but you know what? He's a lefty that he had really high expectations and high projections. And you know what? He would be, if they could get him on like a cheap deal or an incentive deal, he's not going to play a lot because of Alonso, but I just think he'd just be nice to have his insurance as a nice bat off the bench. Again, I think he'd be looking for more than that. And I feel like someone's going to be willing to take a flyer on him that's much better. But a guy that does stand out more would be Steve Pearce. He was a World Series MVP 2 years ago. I know he's older, but he can play a lot of positions. He's a tough player. He can play first base pretty well. He can hit lefties well. And I just think that he's been around the league. He'd be a nice veteran that would complement all these young players. I mean, this team is really, really young. And with Todd Frazier out the door, they don't really have a veteran leader. And Jet Lowry, he's older, but I don't know if he's necessarily a veteran leader per se. Will Steve Pearce take a big leadership role? I don't know, but I think it is worth considering. I mean, here's a guy who had a World Series MVP under his belt, and I just think it's something that he could, try to help these other young guys. Like, listen, I've been in the World Series. This is what you have to do. I've been with a lot of teams, a lot of experience. You just got to hope that he can help these younger players. Second base, some pretty good options out there. Brian Dozier, who wasn't as great at the Nationals as I thought he was going to be. Maybe you could still try to get another bounce back from him. The Nationals were hoping for a bounce back. Didn't get it. Maybe the Mets could get one out of him. But again, like with Jet Lowry here, they're not going to be able to do these moves. Starlin Castro, he'd be a really nice boost. So you don't have to see him with the Marlins. He definitely would be great off the bench. Probably could start a good portion. He could fill in for Cano, honestly. Brock Holt, another guy who could play a lot of positions. Jason Kipnis, someone that the Mets had targeted in years past. Had some versatility. He had a home run against the Mets in the series against Cleveland at Citi Field. So he definitely could help this team. Wilmer Flores, I really would sign him. I know he wouldn't ask for a lot, so I definitely wouldn't make that move. He could play all over the field. He could hit lefties well. He's done well in the Mets uniform. Again, you can't undervalue that. I think that's something that's really important. Definitely would give Wilmer Flores a contract. Ben Zobrist, another guy that's hurt the Mets. They almost had him when they risked Daniel Murphy for him. They lost Murphy, and that ended up being a big loss for him because how good he was for the Washington Nationals, how much he stuck it to the Mets. But Ben Zobrist, again, another guy could play a lot of positions. So Jed Lowry, he can't play. Well, he can play second base and third base, really. I mean, he's not going to be a great first baseman. He's too old to be a shortstop. He's not going to be an outfielder. So Jed Lowry isn't really a true versatility guy. I mean, guys like Brock Holt or Jason Kipnis or Ben Zobrist, these are guys that can actually play multiple positions. So they serve much more value than Jed Lowry, and you can also save money to use for a position that you need, like a reliever, like the backup catcher, like a true outfielder, or taking on a contract via trade. That's another thing the Mets could do. But other guys, Scooter Gennett, I mean, only a couple years ago, he was a really good player. Eduardo Nunez was someone I wanted the Mets to get instead of Todd Frazier. But he's really fallen off the map. Not the same player he was, but he has versatility. He has speed. At third base, Josh Dawson is still out there. I know the Mets would not be willing to give him the deal that he deserves, but you know what? He crushed the Mets last year with the Braves. And you know what? The Nationals are talking to him. Braves are still talking to him. He still could very easily end up in the division and hurt the Mets again. I know they're not willing to spend the money, but I mean, it'd be awesome to have Donaldson on this team. Again, with current ownership, they won't do it. It's unfortunate, but he's a guy that if they were willing to spend the money, he really could help this team out a lot. Ashuel Cabrera, he's still out there again. The Mets had an opportunity to get him instead of Joe Panic. They did not, and Ashuel Cabrera, he did pretty well for the Nationals to end the season, but for Cabrera, it doesn't have that much left in the tank, so I don't really think that's something you should pursue that much, unless he's willing to accept a really cheap deal. Again, trying to offload Jed Lowry's contract. That's going to be probably the two main things the Mets are going to have to work on in the offseason is finding out what to do with Jed Lowry with his contract. Getting another reliever I still think is important. What are they going to do with the starting pitchers and a backup catcher? And really, still try to get a real center fielder because, like I said, with Cespedes and Conforto and Nimmo and JD and McNeil, there's no true center fielder. Marisnick comes out there late in games, but what about the other innings where you need somebody that can catch the ball and do something for you offensively, throw runners out, and be a really good center fielder, like the way Carlos Beltran was for them, in years past when he won the Gold Gloves. Having a really good center fielder, there is value to that. Like I said, Todd Frazier's a free agent. Who knows if they'll bring him back? I mean, if he's willing to take a really, really cheap deal, which he might, because as of right now, I haven't really heard anything with him. Again, veteran leadership, late in games, he could get a big hit here or there. I can't believe I'm saying this. Maybe you could bring him back. Not necessarily that you should, but you could. You know what I mean? Sean Rodriguez, another guy, some versatility, a lot of experience. Matt Duffy had a pretty good year with Tampa Bay Rays. I feel like he's going to get a better deal, so probably can't get him. Martin Prado was a guy that the Mets really should have gotten years past. They never did. He hurt them a lot with the Marlins, a guy that, again, he can hit lefties, play multiple positions, veteran player. I would like to have him. Shortstop, but Daniel Ashbury is out there. I really don't think the Mets are going to bring him back. Some other guys in the outfield, Alex Gordon, a guy obviously hurt the Mets in the World Series. He could play left field. I don't know if he can still play third base as much, but good lefty bat. I mean, he definitely could help any team that you need him to. Corey Dickerson, another good left-handed bat. Charlie Culberson, he was good for the Braves. Again, hurt the competition. He could serve as a nice versatility guy. Rajay Davis is out there again. He had some nice moments for the Mets. I mean, you could bring him back on another minor league deal if he's willing to accept that. Carlos Gonzalez, good hitting left-handed outfielder, but he's going to expect probably a starting deal, I'd imagine. He's not anywhere close to the guy he used to be. Curtis Granderson's out there. I would love to have Grandy back because he was such a good player and also just a really, really good guy. And again, it's just like a likable team. He'd be a great veteran for leadership and somebody that could fill in for the outfield every now and then. Does not play center field. I really didn't like when this has been a problem for a while now where because Juan Lagares has been either hurt or can't hit, the Mets have had so many not traditional center fielders. And Granderson, even he was playing center field in his late 30s. You know what I mean? Like, they've had Cespedes in center field who doesn't belong there. Granderson's been out there who does not belong there. Nimmo, Conforto. These guys are not center fielders, but the Mets have constantly had to do it because they have not had a real center fielder. The center fielders that are out there, Kevin Pillar. I do like him because you know what? Pillar can play center field and play it really, really well and hit a little bit. You know what I mean? He'll hit better than Jake Marisnick. So, Pillar, I would like to see a deal for him. I don't think they're going to do it. But he's probably not going to start, again, like if Cespedes is out there and Conforto and Nimmo, because of offensive purposes, Pillar's probably not going to start. Gerard Dyson has a lot of speed in center field. Billy Hounds has a lot of speed in center field. They're not great hitters, so you don't want them as your stars, but they can provide a lot of speed off the bench. And, again, the defensive replacement, I'll never forget that play that Billy Hounson had against the Mets where he scored from second base or first base or whatever it was because for some reason on a ground ball, left hit, base hit, J.D. Davis decided to do a full spin and then throw it, and then Billy Hamilton scored, and that got me so angry. I'm still kind of frustrated by it, honestly, because that should never happen. especially when that was like a big game against the Braves. I talked about that stretch of them pressing. Like, you needed those games so badly, and little mistakes like that in the field, you can't let that happen. So they have not improved the defense at all. Again, Jake Marisnick is late in games, but as far as the everyday lineup, it's hard to get these two-way players. I mean, that's why these guys, they're worth the big bucks. And the Mets, they don't want to spend the big bucks. So they have to try to do it from within and I guess hope that these guys can improve defensively. J.D. Davis definitely got better as the season progressed in left field. I believe with more experience, Jeff McNeil will improve at third base or improve in the outfield. So that's good. But you know what? Michael Conforto and Brandon Nimmo, they're not going to get faster per se, so they're not going to become better center fielders. Brandon Nimmo's arm is not going to be better. I mean, I'm more so worried about his arm than his range because Nimmo definitely has a lot of speed, and he could get to some balls in center field, but, his arm does concern me, and I guess taking the right angles. We talk about route efficiency and catch probability, all these analytics that go into catching fly balls in the outfield. Brandon Nimmo doesn't necessarily excel at that. One of the other guys that's out there, I mean, not Juan Lagares, forget him, they're not bringing him back. Maybe they could if it was a really cheap deal, but with Marisnick, again, it's so redundant. Jacoby Ellsbury, I know you probably give me a lot of slander and hate for it, but why not? Because the thing is that, like, Ellsbury, I feel like it was more so like that the Yankees didn't necessarily want him or need him, so they kind of just made up injuries for him. I really think that could have been something. Maybe Jacoby Ellsbury was a lot more healthy than we thought he was. And again, try to stick it to the Yankees because the Mets really should try to hurt the division. Or, I mean, they're not really going to hurt the Yankees. The Yankees are going to win over 100 games and be deep into the playoffs again. And meanwhile, the Mets probably won't even make the playoffs. So, they're not really going to hurt the Yankees that much. But still, just stick it to them a little tiny bit, which Jacoby Ellsbury could do. So I do think that's something that is worth pursuing. Some other outfielders are out there. Nicholas Castellanos asked for a lot of money. The Mets are not going to do it. Someone like Josh Donaldson, you would like to have him, but you're not going to have him because they're not going to spend the money. Cameron Maybin, he's a guy that I highlighted because, again, with the Yankees, I mean, he was really, really good. He had such a great year for them. And then it's like, of course for the Mets, he's not going to be nearly the same player, but you got to try. I don't think Maybin's going to ask for a lot of money because the fact that he's still out there and he had such a good year for the Yankees and he ended up being a leader for this team. And I think he's someone that can help the Mets out a lot. He definitely has speed. He has power. He has defense. He could hit. Like, he could do everything. So, and he's not going to cost a lot. I really would like to see the Mets bring in Cameron Maybin. Forget Jake Marisnick. I would like to see Cameron Maybin because at least he can help this team in more areas than just one. Some other guys, Yasiel Puig, I mean, he can help you on offense. He has a tremendous arm, but he's not really going to fit in with this team with the personalities and being a corner outfielder. I just don't think that's going to happen. The other guy, Hunter Pence, I highlighted him last year too because he's a tough out, and he made the All-Star team for the Texas Rangers last year. I know as a DH, but you know what? If he's willing to take a cheap deal, which I don't think he's going to, but you have him as a bench piece, as a fill-in guy, he would be a really, really nice piece to have. Starting pitchers, if you were to trade one of them and you want someone to fill in, Aaron Sanchez, I know he had the injury with Houston when they got him, but he's a guy that he definitely is a good starting pitcher and could help a team. I don't know exactly how his rehab is going, but even something much, much later on, something you could consider. And the relief pitchers, I talked about them already, but again, Daniel Hudson, Will Harris, both those guys can help this team out tremendously. Not see the minor league relievers anymore. I don't want to see them again. I want to see major league guys. And there's plenty of options out there. There's even more relievers that you could talk about that the Mets could potentially sign. Again, it's going to be hard to assemble a bullpen compared to years past where you have this 3-batter minimum. It's really going to add a different element to the team. But let's talk about some of the offseason rumors. One of the only things that's been out there the whole offseason and still out there kind of recently is Sterling Marte. Now, I said before, I really do want a two-way center fielder. And Sterling Marte, it seems, would fit the bill. But the thing about Marte is that the defensive metrics show that his numbers have slipped defensively in center field. So if he's not a true center fielder anymore, I really don't think he helps this team that much. He had almost 300 average last year, which is really good. Had some good power. That's good. He has speed. And the name that's been thrown out there is Brandon Nimmo, which people believe is not that much of an upgrade. Which, you know what, with the kind of troubles that Brandon Nimmo had last year, not only health-wise, but even when he was out there striking out too much, not being that reliable as an everyday player, I think Marte actually is better than Brandon Nimmo. Nimmo has more upside because of how young he is compared to Marte, and then contracts and all that stuff, less money, which is probably going to end up being the deciding factor between the Mets getting Marte and not getting him. And you know what, if he's not going to be the true center fielder, he's not really that worth it. Unless they get a two-way center fielder, they shouldn't make the move. And then the other thing is that, I saw some stuff with Arenado and Lindor and Betts. Mets aren't going to make those moves. They don't have the prospects or the pieces that you need. The assets really is the word to get those kind of quality players. And for the Mets, I just think that they're better off waiting on those guys. And if Steve Cohen is going to be as great as we all hope, he'd be willing to spend the money to get these guys and give Lindor the contract that he deserves. Give Mookie Betts the contract he deserves. I think once Mookie's a free agent, that should be their top goal. Sign Mookie Betts. He does it all. He can play center field, he can play right field, he can play second base. He does it all. MVP caliber player. Mookie Betts was not as good as he was last year, but he still would help this team out tremendously, especially if Cespedes walks and if Conforto, maybe you can't re-sign him, and if Nimmo isn't healthy and J.D. Davis isn't the same player. Outfield might be a position that you need to address, and Mookie Betts could definitely help you get that done. But still, I really want to see more depth from the relievers. That's going to be my main thing. Betances is nice, but I need more because we're going to see these other guys fill in, all these minor league relievers. They're going to give up a lot of runs, and they're going to cost the Mets games. And when the division is going to be that tight, the wild card is going to be a tight race. You just want to win those games here or there. And again, if you just get a few wins, performance, and improvement, you will end up maybe making the playoffs. So, all in all, I'm curious to see what Beltran does, with the lineup decisions, with bullpen management, a new manager, how that's going to affect the team and all the players. But really, it's going to be like, where are they going to make improvements from last season? Are they going to be able to get everyone to stay healthy again? Get Pete Alonso to play this well again? J.D. Davis, Jeff McNeil, Michael Conforto, Ahmed Rosario, all these young players going to play that well again? Are they going to get another really good year of Wilson Ramos? Another Cy Young year out of the ground. Starting pitching healthy again. Will Edwin Diaz bounce back? Will Jeurys Familia bounce back? There are a lot of questions, and because of that, my projection for them is like 88 wins, maybe 89 wins. If these guys can all hit, the Mets could be a playoff team. But we just said the same thing last year. And you know what? The other thing is that I see too many similarities from 2019 and 2018 where they finished the season so strong in 2018, they didn't build off it. And so I can't count on them building off it at the end of last year as well. They will be better. I don't think enough better to where they make the playoffs and that they'll just miss it again. And that's why you have to hope that every year it feels like they're close but not enough. And you just have to hope because we don't know for a fact. That's why I keep saying hope, because we don't know for a fact that Steve Cohen is going to spend all the money that we think he's going to, and we really hope that he's going to and that he has to if the team is going to be. But you hope that with Steve Cohen, close eventually will become enough, because it's like the Mets are close right now, but they haven't spent enough money to where they would be at the level that they need to be, where you can count on them being a playoff team. And you hope that Cohen is willing to go that extra step to get the Mets into the playoffs and become a winning team. But hopefully you guys did enjoy this. If you did, leave a like, comment on some feedback, trying a lot of stuff out with the editing, with off-season previews. If you want another team, let me know. I'm going to try to do a Giants one, a Jets one, and maybe a Yankees one just because we're doing the other teams. The Yankees, there isn't too much to talk about, but it is worth recapping and seeing how the season went and what else they could do, because I don't think the Yankees are necessarily done either because they have not addressed their offense. So, again, have a good one, everybody, and Happy New Year!